Well, in the 1990s, you remember those? I went on 2 trips with this church, mission trips, to work with the Appalachia Service Project. And, some of you might know that, known as ASP. One year I accompanied a trip to West Virginia, and the next year we went to Virginia. Well, I was still working then. My children were in elementary school, and I had not traveled out of the country yet. And the youth who went with us were middle school or high school age, and many of them also hadn't traveled much out of the United States, and some of them hadn't really traveled out of McHenry. Well, during a debriefing meeting, once we returned, many of us, adults and youth pretty equally, talked about how that experience opened our eyes to our own privilege as residents who live in a collar county of Chicago. We learned that the definition of highway is different. Bathrooms aren't quite the same everywhere. And that food was often farm to table before that phrase became fashionable. In one home that we worked on, the father of the house came out with a shotgun and said he was going into the woods to search for that night's meat. That was shocking to most of us. And debriefing further, we shared stories about showering with no hot water and sleeping on the floor of the school that served as our housing on our first trip. I grabbed at the top of the teacher's desk as my bed, and that later proved to be a very wise decision. A lot of the kids brought snacks. Snacks bring critters. So I was up a level. Someone remarked that they learned on the trip that the ASP, when it first became an organization, the exterior of the houses were painted with paint that had been donated by the Road Commission. As a result, bright yellow, road stripe yellow houses dotted the landscape. These brightly colored houses served as a testimony to the generosity of the community and the visitors who came to help. ASP was founded in 1969 by a United Methodist pastor, Reverend Glenn Tex Evans. He coined the organization's philosophy of service that is still their guiding star today. We accept people right where they are, just as they are. And we felt that to be true. Yes, our eyes were opened by our ASP experience, but so were our hearts. Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." To be weary is to be worn out, physically and spiritually. I've taught students who, at the age of 16, were not able to participate in after-school sports or activities like most of their classmates because they had to work in order to help their families keep a roof over their head and food on their table. We can only imagine how worn out, how weary these young people became as they reached middle age. Other people may have more solid finances, but they carry spiritual burdens like guilt, shame, and regret. Spiritual weariness happens too, and some people reach a point where they live their lives simply going through the motions. Yes, Jesus knew that among God's creation, there are those who have been so deeply wounded by life that weariness has taken over their soul. And to those, Jesus promises rest. But Jesus' rest is best received when we open our hearts. An open heart urges us to live honestly and authentically, and to allow others to do the same. As Text 7 said, we accept people right where they are, just the way they are. Warts and all, vulnerabilities and imperfections included, all of it. An open heart is emotionally honest, full of compassion, and courageous in the pursuit of happiness. Many of those years we search with our brain, right? Many of our years when we are searching for happiness, we search with our brain because we have reasoned about what we think will make us happy. And often our brain things are found out there. A new car, a new home, fancy clothes. All of the external things that we spend much of our lives pursuing because we think that's where we're going to find happiness. But true happiness will only be found when our hearts are open and we gaze inward. Inward to the place where we have invited Jesus to live. To the place where love resides. Welcome to worship. We are so glad you're here.